I'm Chelsea Carney, and I'll be reading my piece, False Starts. In 2020, the amount of false starts I've encountered have been dizzying. Blame it on this COVID, this quarantine, this president, this year, but it's like my brain is fragmented and I only have access to one compartment at a time. Whether it's getting distracted by my phone 3 minutes into a Netflix movie or anxiously rereading the same work project over and over again, I can't seem to finish an entire thought. As a writer, whole essays are taking up space in my head, but all I ever get out on paper is a single sentence, one after another, like a choose your own adventure to the threads in my brain. I used to be fuller, more articulate. Now I'm looking at a blinking mouse on a blank page, desperately trying to manifest an intelligible paragraph. It makes me feel less than, like I've been cut in half. That's the thing about writing in quarantine, living in quarantine. I've searched my room, my thoughts, my hard drives, and churned up nothing but wasted one-liners and badly written paragraphs. My memories are bleak, too, shadowy. They bleed into my brain and mix with rage, with fear, with disgust, muddling together into a weird purplish blue that makes my temples hurt. Once sniffing out promotions and publishing deals, new restaurants in the village and shows at Union Hall, I'm now 4 inches tall, centering myself in a 14-inch screen, waiting to click a button that says, "Hey Chelsea, you exist now." Taking inventory of all those single, static sentences, each a start to an essay I'd hoped to write this year, I look for a thread, a way to come back to myself, to remember what it's like to be bright without an on switch. False start number 1. At 9 years old, I became obsessed with Mae West. I remember sitting in an office at St. Joseph's Hospital waiting for my mother to finish up work. Her being a nurse, I knew it would take a while, so using one of those boxy computers from the 90s to research a homework assignment, I'd clicked on a quote. "When I'm good, I'm very good, but when I'm bad, I'm better." Referencing the black and white photo attributed to the page, I noticed a buxom woman with pencil-thin eyebrows wearing a satin dress dripping with furs and pearls. Instantly mesmerized. It wasn't her celebrity I was enamored with. It was her lack of boundaries. Something so intoxicating about being exactly who you are. In a snap, I didn't have to fit into a box or a stereotype. I could celebrate my anger, my lust, my individuality. She embodied me emotionally, and if I'm being honest, I sometimes wonder if physically too, as if the ghost of Mae West and I met in elementary school and somehow fused. Today I have that quote on a magnet, a reminder that rules about how I should be, live, act are arbitrary. 4 inches or 5'4", I am still me. I'll glance at it sometimes and wish I had that much conviction. In 2020, conviction isn't lacking. There are so many people taking to the streets in protest, volunteering at polling stations, sending letters to get voters registered. My mom and her wife volunteer at a soup kitchen, my brother-in-law too. People in New York I've known for a decade are hiking the Adirondacks every weekend or opening up their own pop-up sandwich shops in Sonoma County. I want to help, to scream, to shout, to create something, anything impactful, but like the rest of my false starts, it all goes nowhere. Trying to use my art as a catalyst, I sit in front of my computer for hours, but my fingers stiffen and I'm unable to finish the thought, let alone the page. Instead, I pick apart my emotions. Indignation seems to be the headliner most days. False start number 2. Fuck Tucker Carlson. I'd wanted to write a scathing op-ed after reading a headline on the banner of my laptop. Tucker Carlson argues that Breonna Taylor and George Floyd had it coming. I'd submit it to a college paper, maybe BuzzFeed or another liberal Times. Instead, I muffled emotion into a pillow. My husband's anger was louder. He shouted and yelled. I'm jealous. I want to be more like that, but I'm trapped, contained in a too small cardboard box with an expiration date and a label. Womanhood, it says in big, bold letters. Pacifism is written on the side in black Sharpie. Docility is scribbled at the top. Softness, sweetness, sugar, spice. No room in these tight quarters for rage. I can't even cry. Then the label would be emotional. "Fuck Tucker Carlson," I type over and over again. I suppose there's relief in being defiant. Coming from a line of powerful and complicated women, I'd always imagined myself a kind of warrior. Loud, brash, definitely part May, but as I found my footing in a world of Tucker Carlsons, I realized that in order to succeed, I'd have to bury a part of myself. Sometimes that part was too much self-esteem, other times it was weakness. Once, using a band-aid, it was the tattoo on my left hand. But the more things I buried, the more unbalanced I became until I couldn't quite figure out what face to show universally. I thought I grew out of that, but now in quarantine that feeling is back, and I think of all the ways I'm drawn and quartered. The split DNA of being born to a liberal mother and a conservative father, the in-between area that exists from being planted in blood-red Arizona and resoiled in deep blue New York. Like the Zoom screen I'm constricted by, I am both sharp and in focus and blurred at the bottom as I try to find the absolute version of who I am. Being gray isn't acceptable. Neither is choosing a side. False start number 3. I am fire doused in alcohol. Sides have officially been chosen. My older brother and I are in the middle of a Facebook fight. 11 years older than me, Arizona born and bred, made up of Coors Lights and half-smoked cigarettes, drives a truck and thinks it's power. That's my older brother vomiting up conservatism because that's all he's ever known. I vacillate between rage and pity, but all I can think now is how strange it is that he's the firstborn sibling. Once larger than life, tucking me into bed after his high school football games, he now seems small, a 45-year-old child stamping his feet about QAnon when really you know it's because he needs a nap. Come on, big brother, I want to say, you don't really believe that bullshit. But he digs in his heels because when you want what you want with no understanding of why, or worse, that survival is tiered and you're on top, you know no other way. That's what happens when you let something like a state or state of mind contain you. Tense, I sometimes wonder if that's how I would have ended up if I was less pliant. Closing my eyes, I go back to that ranch-style house of my childhood, in that cul-de-sac near Central Avenue with that ugly plaid couch in front of our TV. I try to remember if him and I experienced our adolescence differently, to pinpoint whatever it was that made us so disparate. If it was hot or cold in that room because we cracked the back door, if our cribbage board was set up on the coffee table half played or newly minted. We'd watched the news together one night and saw that a boy in Laramie, Wyoming was beaten and roped to a fence post, burned, and left to die. I remember the news reporter asking if Matthew Shepard, barely 21, had the gay plague. When my brother and I stopped by a Circle K later to get gas, I'd read on the cover of a newsstand, "Homosexual disease threatens American family." Later, when my mother came out of the closet, trembling and with unstudied conviction, I'd cried, "Why do you want to hurt yourself? Why are you choosing to die?" That's the perpetual story we're feeding our children. This alienating anthem of reasoning and excuses. Their choice, we hear, their indiscretions, their fault. 23 years after Matthew Shepard, I read the same excuse of a 25-year-old woman being shot to death by cops while asleep in her own bed. Back then, my brother was the first to touch my shoulder and remind me if mom's happy, so are we. Now there's no hand reaching out gently. Instead, we trade nasty insults over social media, each convinced that our version is right. False start number 4. I named my teddy bear Michael after the man who gifted it to me. Michael the bear has a blue satin ribbon tied in a bow around its neck and tiny fuzzy arms that move up and down in whatever position you want them. I'm the same. Hands straight, fingers bent at 90 degrees, day in, day out sitting. I wake up and put on a pretty blue blouse with leggings because I'm only ever seen from the chest up like a half person. Bendable, fixed, stationary. These are also things that describe a lamp. That's what the world wants anyway, right? A shelf of pretty soft things. Perfect as long as they're amenable. Michael the man liked to buy me ice cream. Tall and skinny, he wore button-downs from the 1970s with collars always too big for his delicate neck. A close family friend, he was one of the people who supported my mom after she came out. We'd go to parties at his house, spend Saturday nights at the diner with him, rolling our eyes as he complained how the fries he was stuffing into his mouth would affect his weight. One time he took us to the Renaissance Fair. At 10, I witnessed Michael accidentally cut his arm and bleed onto the carpet. My mom, the nurse, screamed for me to get back, but I was steel in the doorframe, so she shot forward, hands crushing my shoulders as she shoved me hard against the couch. I remember Michael's face turning rainbow shades as he vomited. Green, red, yellow, blue, spraying the white linoleum floor of his bathroom like a pea green Jackson Pollock. I didn't understand. I'd noticed how rigid and angular his cheekbones had gotten, the sallow color of his skin. I was angry that no one would let me hug him. Depuzzling my own brain is like a minefield I'm running through trying to avoid the explosions, but May reminds me of Michael. Like her, he was dismissed as someone singular and static, dying from something we once classified as the gay plague. He was a man targeted by his label, erased by the same patriarchy that tried to contain such women, women who knew exactly who they were and refused to let themselves be boxed. When Michael gifted me that teddy bear in what I can only imagine now was a last-ditch effort to be remembered as a person, the teddy bear I placed on the dark oak dining table as my mother and I sewed together his AIDS quilt. It's only now I realize what he left behind. A part of him precious. To keep safe. False start number 5. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is dead. My husband tells me from the spare bedroom of our new home. I'm on the couch watching some Netflix show I don't even like, and then I'm stung in all directions by a herd of angry wasps. What, I ask? My voice is a rattle. RBG died, he responds. I unconsciously touch my own abdomen, wondering how long it will be until someone takes away the rights to my insides, not that they already haven't. The lower half of my body ornamented in flat black lycra, the half that's perpetually invisible even outside of 2020, seems to be a manifestation of this moment. I used to volunteer at a Planned Parenthood in Arizona. Between the ages of 14 and 18, 10,000 hours I spent in those drafty brown offices. Every day I'd walk through a line of circling picketers armed with their signs. "Don't go into the baloney factory," one read, and I remember whipping toward the well-driven roads of a man's face and demanding of him, with powerful 16-year-old conviction, "What right do you have to my body? What right do you have to any of ours?" He didn't stop walking or picketing. He didn't look me in the eye. He didn't say one goddamn word. Agonizing how we keep doing that. Instead of learning from our past mistakes, we pounce, a game of whack-a-mole where each of us are armed with hammers pounding down whatever's different. It isn't loud women we fear, gay parents, they pronouns. It's otherness. It's controlling otherness. My mother calls about Ruth Bader Ginsburg when I don't answer. She texts, "I want to console her. I want her to console me. But unless I can reach through the black screen I keep in my pocket, shatter the glass, and climb through limb by limb so I can hold her, I don't pick up the phone. Not today when my grief has outgrown my conviction." This year of 2020 seems to be one false start after another, a never-happening beginning where the shotgun keeps getting closer to my ear and the finish line keeps getting further and further away. In this exercise of deconstructing myself, I stagger. Sometimes I feel whole again, put back together. Mostly I stare across a field at my shadow as it dissipates away from the light. "Did you know my great-grandparents immigrated from Spain to New Jersey to give your grandmother a better life?" my mom recounted one day. But instead of settling down in Garfield and getting married like they wanted her to, she stuck up her thumb and hitchhiked to Phoenix, Arizona in the 1940s to become a nurse. "Why are you telling me this?" I ask. She pauses. I realize. They are the thread that binds me. Powerful, strong, unwavering women who, despite their complexity and mistakes, have shown bravery in the face of complacence. The reason I exist, the reason my brother does, built on a foundation of dissent instead of obedience. Last false start. I miss the way the creosote bushes permeate the air after it rains in Arizona. Pine, citrus, rosemary dipped in chlorine. To release the smell, you can spit on them. Crush the flowers between your hands. If you've never seen an Arizona rainstorm, the clouds roll in like smoking fingers gripping at a glowing half-brown sky. The saguaros butting up against the mountains stand defenseless, hands up in the air to prove they're unarmed, exposed, naked, helpless, damp, unrooted earth seeping between your bare toes, lightning entangled silver flashes as electricity splits the ceiling. Then the rain comes. It doesn't fall or trickle in or drip like the soft romantic rainstorms you see in movies. It drums the roof and pounds the asphalt. It shatters windows and floods into rivers, feral and divisive. Wet, dark, deep earth, relentless, impossible. The saguaros toppled over are alone, broken, unprotected, and with the creosote bushes wet, the air is permeated in their fragrance. It seeps into your skin, melts into your pheromones. It's inescapable, the smell of Arizona when it's angry. I don't want to be a lamp. I don't want to be a half person fixed and stationary. I want to stand in the rain of Arizona while it thrashes, prop up the saguaros when they break and bend, throw my body in front of theirs, remind my brother, my state, who the fuck I am, remind myself. I am not 14 inches of screen subdued by this quarantine. I am not a half woman in a pretty blue blouse or a flower you can crush between your fingers. I am Ruth. I am May. I am the foundation my grandmother built for me, dissent instead of obedience, and the fortitude of a mother who raised me to breathe flames. I am a whole person, full of joy and mistakes that you or I don't get to excuse because it doesn't fit into some narrative. Fire doused in alcohol. Smother me, and I grow.